So, what would you think about Donald Trump giving preferential treatment to military service members that were MAGA? Yeah. So, Christopher Goldsmith, who is the head of Unite for Vets, he's an advocate for U.S. veterans. He is reporting that at Donald Trump's speech in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, all of the attendees, the military attendees, were screened for their political leanings. Yes. In addition to that, private companies came in with big merch buses to sell Trump merch gear to our soldiers on base. I personally don't know about the legality of that. Seems a little odd though. Yeah, they were selling necklaces with Donald Trump white privilege credit cards on them to U.S. military personnel who had been vetted to make sure they were MAGA. I'm not saying that no one who wasn't MAGA got to attend because I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know that they were screened. And then when you couple that with the head of the army coming out and basically saying, this is Donald Trump's army now, that in itself is also somewhat concerning because to me, it's the United States Army. But with all of the things that have gone on with Donald Trump, talk of becoming a dictator, um, trying to attack the judiciary, getting rid of anyone who could possibly hold him accountable for anything, and then doing this with the military should be cause for concern for sure. The U.S. military cannot be a political thing. It cannot be a political uh, unit of the United States government. It just can't be. That's not a thing. These people swore an oath to their country, not to Donald Trump, is what I'm saying. And as we've seen, Donald Trump isn't necessarily uh, too worried about the country. He's more worried about being Donald Trump. Yeah, and getting everything he can from that. If I was in the U.S. military and I was stationed at Fort Bragg and I was given some type of political screening to attend an event or to get preferential seating or whatever the purpose of that was, I likely just would not attend unless I was ordered to do so, which is entirely possible. Even if those soldiers who did not pass the political screening test still attended, you have now segregated Donald Trump soldiers with American soldiers. Yes. Nothing about anything that is happening within this administration is normal, and it seems like everyone's walking around just acting like it is. But it's not. There's nothing normal about any of this. Now, I have held held firm in my belief that the United States, the way our government was set up, the way the founding fathers set up this nation, that we could withstand, anything that was thrown at, especially this kind of stuff. There's a lot of checks in place, um, but largely, it feels like it's sort of crumbling. I don't know if it's holding up, is what I'm saying. And I don't know what this means if it doesn't. I feel like we haven't been here before. I feel like, and for quite a while, we've been in a place that is unfamiliar and unprecedented and, somewhat scary as a person who lives in this country that has kids that have a long future ahead of them. I am nervous about what their future looks like. It's not pleasing to think about. And I think it's quite possible that Donald Trump has all of the pieces in place. He has members of the Republican Party who will let him do whatever he wants to do completely unchecked. At this point, I think even if something were to occur, that would mean initiation of the removal of President Trump, it still wouldn't happen. They would find a way to stop it or just retain office and just not leave. And I don't know that we have people in place that would do anything about it. I feel like they would just make an excuse to keep him there for as long as possible. And look, I'm not saying this kind of stuff to try to scare people or incite fear, but when the President of the United States is giving political screenings to military service members, that's pretty sketchy. That's pretty sketchy. That's pretty dark, and that's pretty ominous. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope with everything I have that I am completely wrong. But why in the world would the President of the United States be giving political screenings to U.S. military members? They're there. They took an oath to this country already. What is that about? I always felt like even if there was a lot of people in this country that were dumb enough to rise up and fight for Donald Trump, which we know there are, that the military would be there. You know, I always felt like the military would be there to protect us. You still feel that way? Because I'm not sure I do. And I almost feel guilty for doubting them. But come on. Come on. I guess what I'm saying is at this point, I would have to be convinced that Donald Trump is not trying to stay in power and be a dictator and change the way our government works and changes everything that we believe in as a nation. At this point, I would have to be convinced there's some type of evidence that he's not trying to do that.